What's up, people? Welcome to another edition of the Black and Gold Hour podcast. And like I said, me and Mike, we're back for another edition of draft coverage. We're here at night 2, and I'm happy to have my boy back. I'm happy to have him here. And I'm excited to talk Saints football because kind of going into tonight with the Saints drafting defensive end Peyton Turner, Who Dat Nation, me, Mike, everybody had demands for the New Orleans Saints organization. We wanted them to go possibly, quarterback, cornerback, wide receiver, linebacker. There's so many big names coming out of this draft that it was really important for the New Orleans Saints to kind of give Who Dat Nation a sigh of relief. And for me, they did. So I want to start off this show asking Mike, how did you feel after night 1 headed into tonight?
Yeah, I think the pick that we had, at first it was a little bit unsettling, and then a late night grind session of watching some film, just grinding it out, getting over the awe factor that we took a defensive end after we picked up Marcus Davenport's 5th-year option, just getting over the awe factor. And then, our podcast really fired me up. And I'm like, you know what, bro, what's the point of being negative about it? So, Peyton Turner, defensive end from Houston, super humble dude, by the way. All his interviews, he was crushing them. He seems like a really chill, down-to-earth dude. I'm really excited to see him succeed, honestly, because he carries himself completely differently than Davenport does, in my opinion. Davenport's just kind of just like a dude, he's nothing like crazy. But I feel like Peyton Turner's just like extra nice, it seems like. I don't know, maybe it's just because he got drafted. I don't know. He just seems like a cool dude. I feel like I could just reach out to him and say, hey man, what's up, type of dude. But yeah, I think, like you just said, we knew there were some needs that still needed to be fulfilled. And we were very curious about who was going to be available. We saw some crazy people fall, yesterday. And then we continued to see guys fall, like JOK, he was falling all the way down today too. And it's like, maybe we'll get him, maybe we won't. I don't know. The Browns snagged him right before we could get him. And then it just kind of kept raising questions. As soon as that pick was made, I was like, all right, who are we going for? Are we going for Jabril Cox, Nick Bolton? Are we going for Terrace Marshall? What's the move here? But I couldn't be more happy with our 2 draft picks today. And the Saints didn't have to do anything crazy to go and get them either. And I think we really hit a home run today, and it really made up for yesterday. But yeah, I think, with the picks we made today, it kind of allowed us to be able to make just kind of in a way, I guess, just a best player available selection yesterday. Mm-hmm. I know he's not the best player available by any means. No disrespect to Peyton Turner, but he was definitely not the best player available. But, he's a player that the Saints obviously thought very highly of. And, the picks that we made today definitely allowed the Saints to be able to make that pick. So.
Right. And the thing I like about Peyton Turner was his interview after being drafted. He probably didn't expect to go that high. And one thing I like about that is you saw his joy. You saw that he was ready to play, how excited he was. Getting drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, that's something, that's one of the biggest memories probably of his life. And it was something that, you could see on his face. So hopefully he brings that passion, to the field. But now I kind of want to touch on tonight. And in last night's episode, we talked about the theme of the show being the Saints sticking with what's working. But tonight, I want to say the theme is big time players who make big time plays. And that's something you hear in NBA, NFL. You hear that all the time in sports. But the players that were selected, players who make plays. You got, linebacker Pete Werner out of Ohio State being selected by the New Orleans Saints. And then you got Paulson Adebo, cornerback out of Stanford, being selected by the New Orleans Saints. And both of those players, if you watch the highlights, if you watch the film, if you watch the games, they make plays. They're leaders. You're going to hear their name on the intercom. But I first kind of want to talk about Pete Werner. And I'm going to go first because Pete Werner is my guy. I just talked about him in a video I posted a couple of weeks ago, my top 5 linebacker prospects. We had Jamin Davis, you had Jabril Cox, you had a lot of linebackers, you had Jock, and you had so many players that were on that episode that I talked about. But the last player that I talked about before that episode ended was cornerback Pete Werner. Dude is a dog. I mean, when you watch his highlights, you don't see the same burst that you might see with the other linebacker prospects, but you see something else. You see toughness, you see grit, you see swagger, you see style, you see all the things that the New Orleans Saints defense has played with in the last 2 or 3 seasons. And I think he fits well. He's not afraid to, get in there and crack some heads. He's not afraid to, as my dad would say when I played football, crack some skulls, man. Pete Werner can do it all, man. And he's that type of player that, he doesn't talk a lot, but he plays with his fundamentals, and that's so important at the next level. And on top of that, he wraps up. He's quiet, doesn't say a lot, just plays with swagger. He lets the play do the talking for him. And that's what I like about Pete Werner. That was a player that once the Saints drafted him, I was like, okay, I can exhale. Okay, no matter what they do after this, I'm very happy with this selection and this move in the draft. So I kind of want to ask you how you felt about the Saints selecting linebacker Pete Werner out of Ohio State.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's no gamble that the Saints took with this pick. It's a very, very safe pick. There's no character concerns. There's no durability concerns. There's nothing other than the fact that there's just other linebackers that are maybe better than Pete Werner. And that's the only reason he fell to the second round. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's an outstanding linebacker. My initial kind of comparison for him is like a young, elite, healthy Kiko Alonso or like Matt Milano for the Buffalo Bills. 2 very athletic linebackers who can, play the football in the air. That's the one thing that Pete Werner can do that other Saints linebackers really can't is excel in pass defense, which is an area that the Saints desperately need help in the linebacker range. We've seen Anzalone get cooked far too many times. We've seen his little blonde curly locks floating behind him, trying to catch up to dudes. I mean, we've seen it with every Saints linebacker. Really, DeMario's been cooked a few times as well. So ain't nobody safe on the Saints linebacking core in terms of pass defense. But I think the addition of Pete Werner is definitely going to upgrade that unit. And yeah, he's kind of a plug and play guy. Any dude that can rock no sleeves in the middle of Ohio winter and ball out at a high level, bro. They got my respect for sure. I know you're up there in Maryland, bro, so it gets cold up here up north, boy. So if you can do that, bro. And the fact that he was playing elite talent, like he played against Trevor Lawrence in Clemson. He played against some top-notch talent, man, and he was playing at a high level. He played along some great players, yes, but he was a starter for a very, very good Ohio State defense, and he was a leader of that Ohio State defense. So I'm very excited to see how he transitions to the NFL. Yeah, I think he could have the potential to be one of the best picks in the entire draft. I think in a couple of years, we're going to be looking back at it like, why was this dude not a first-round pick? Obviously, he has to prove himself in a strong offseason. Could very well thrust him into a starting role. The Saints linebacking unit is pretty weak right now. There's still a lot of question marks. Are we going to re-sign Quan Alexander? I know he's still working out in his Saints gear. He's healthy. He could come back on a cheap 1-year deal. It doesn't look like he really has any other interest. So that could still potentially be on play, which could, thrust Werner into the backup spot, which isn't a bad thing considering, Alexander's injury history. And then, but even if our linebacking unit is just DeMario, Pete Werner, and Zach Bond, I'm completely content with that. I think that's a linebacking unit that can be bailed out by our first-round pick that we just got yesterday with that strong defensive line. You don't really have to have the greatest linebacking unit. And our third-round pick helps solidify the other weakness of our defense. So I think by the Saints solidifying the defensive line at the defensive end position last night and really making sure that quarterbacks don't have time to throw the ball, it kind of allowed them to not have to get a great linebacker and settle, very loose term. I mean, you're not really having to settle too much for Pete Werner, but you're not getting Micah Parsons, but you are getting a very effective starting linebacker, in my opinion.
Right. And starter was kind of the theme of the draft for Saints fans. We need instant impact kind of players, especially like I was talking about last night. If you feel like the New Orleans Saints are still contenders, then you want immediate impact guys. And with 185 tackles over his, time at Ohio State, I think Pete Werner is a guy that's going to add valuable contributions to the Saints defense. And, with Caden Ellis and Zach Bond, I believe Pete Werner will be a guy that'll have an extensive role in the Saints linebacking corps. And I'm excited to see it. But let's kind of talk about the position that's been on everybody's mind. The position that's been talked about all off season, the position that gives Saints fans the most fits. And yeah, let's talk about it. We're talking about a guy out of Stanford, Paulson Adebo. Saints moved up to get him in a trade from the Broncos, 34 passes defensed. And I want to start with Mike because he was hyped. He was hype about this guy before the show started. And I want to hear how you feel about this Saints drafting Paulson Adebo.
Man. Bruh, when I tell you I was jumping, screaming, bruh, the whole 9 yards, bro. It felt literally like Christmas, bro. That's what the NFL draft is supposed to feel like. Whenever, you see dudes like reacting to game-winning field goals or something like that, or like, game-winning plays and stuff like that. That's how I felt when we just drafted Paulson Adebo. He's been one of my favorite players in this entire draft, and I'm about to tell you why. So he originally was going to declare last year's draft, and he was Mel Kiper's number 2 overall corner in the entire draft. Obviously, he decided to come back for his senior year that he didn't end up playing because of coronavirus. He opted out of the season, spent an entire year simply grinding and training to translate to the professional level, which is one of the things I love the most about potentially getting Caleb Farley in the first round if he wasn't picked at number 22 ahead of us, was the fact that Caleb Farley kind of had that entire year where he opted out of the college football season, one less year of football under his belt, and kind of gave him the opportunity to just kind of transition. So that's the one thing I really love about Paulson Adebo is that he has that year of being a professional athlete. He knows the workout grind. He knows how to take care of his body. It's going to be a pretty flawless transition in that regard. In terms of like on the field talent, he's unbelievable. He's 6'1". He's going to be one of our taller corners, 192 pounds, all muscle. Dude's played at a high level his entire life. He was always really, really good in high school, really, really good, played at a high level in the Pac-12, obviously at Stanford. And then this kind of solidifies my statement yesterday in terms of the Saints potentially still going after Richard Sherman. A third-round cornerback for Richard Sherman isn't going to be much of a deciding factor on whether or not he's going to come and sign with the Saints or not. Maybe if the Saints would have snagged like Caleb Farley or one of the guys like that, he may be like, all right, let me take my talent somewhere else. A third-round cornerback that is a converted wide receiver like Richard Sherman that played at the same exact college as Richard Sherman. I believe actually Richard Sherman has even like tweeted out about Paulson Adebo. I think I'm just realizing this, and it's just all coming to me right now.
Right.
And it's just like, I think they actually low-key have a bit of a connection. I'm going to do more research into that, though. Don't quote me on that. But I feel like Richard Sherman, this is the kind of move that Richard Sherman would approve of. Yes, we traded up for him, but we didn't have to give up no first-round picks or anything along the lines of that. It's just we gave up our 2 third rounds that we had this year. We moved up, got a starting caliber cornerback for next to nothing. This reminds me exactly of what the Saints did last year when they picked up Adam Troutman. We traded up for Adam Troutman. Now we have our starting tight end. This is kind of the exact same thing. Adebo has an outstanding potential. He was drafted. We got him in the third round, and he was I can't even get the words out, bro. I can't get the words out how excited I am because, I mean, being ranked a number 2 corner is like, even in last year's draft where the cornerback market wasn't that strong, but strong enough to still be notable to be a number 2 corner on Mel Kiper's draft board. Like, I mean, granted, Mel Kiper hits and misses more than I do, but still, bro, like that's a number 2 corner. You know what I mean? Like that's a starting caliber corner from the jump. I mean, just listen to these numbers real quick. He's a converted receiver, just like Richard Sherman. They got They were recruited as receivers in high school, switched to corner at the college level, both at Stanford. He, in 2 seasons, because he opted out last year, 97 tackles as a corner, 5 tackles for a loss, a forced fumble, 27 passes defended, 8 interceptions. I love the fact that he's a former receiver because he can make plays on the football, which is something that Marshawn Lattimore can't seem to do. He's a very good corner. Don't get me twisted. He's a very, very good corner. He's a very physical corner. He can completely lock down Mike Evans and Julio Jones, but other weeks are hit or miss. But I think with Paulson Adebo, there is no hit or miss. I think he's going to be very consistent week in and week out. Sure, he's going to have his rookie moments where he gets toasted a time or two, just like Janoris Jenkins did. But I think he's going to be an upgrade from Janoris Jenkins. He may not be quite at the level of Marshawn Lattimore, but I'm going to go out and say it, Merv. I'm going to go out and say it. I think he has defensive rookie of the year potential.
Okay.
Depending on what happens in terms of whether or not we bring in Richard Sherman or another veteran corner this offseason, he's going to start. Like there's no doubt about it. If you look at our depth chart, there's no one that's going to start over Paulson Adebo unless Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's actually serious about converting to corner. I don't see any reason why Adebo is not a starting corner opposite of Lattimore. Barring any health injuries and stuff like, all of that crazy stuff. But barring that he's healthy and we don't bring in another veteran corner or something along the lines of that, there's no reason Adebo's not a starting corner, and there's no reason why he won't have every opportunity in the world to make a name for himself right off the bat.
Right. And I like how you talked about making plays on the football. And that's what I looked at when I saw his highlights, when I watched his film, as I'm going to look at the games, I'm looking for those type of things. And because how many times as Saints fans, and you can go through my Twitter, all of our Twitters, everybody in Who Dat Nation who has a Twitter, how many times have we said the Saints would have so many more interceptions in their stat book if they just turned their head around? This is a guy who's going to turn his head around. This is a guy who's willing to make a play. I see one highlight. He's catching one-handed interception.
One-handed, bro.
One-handed. This is what we've been waiting for. Now, it's okay to have a lockdown corner, and at times Marshawn Lattimore can do that. But Adebo is a guy who's ready to make a play. And I feel like for Saints fans, whether you're offensive-minded or defensive-minded, the key to having success in the playoffs, the Saints have great success in the regular season. The best statistical record, I think, in the last 4 years, correct? So
I'm pretty sure.
The thing about the New Orleans Saints is sometimes their big-time players don't step up at big-time moments. So adding players who have shown the repetition and consistency at that point is a thing that I like most about the Saints. Adding Werner and Adebo, he's going to turn his head around, Who Dat Nation. Trust me, this guy is he's a star.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal player. And go ahead.
And just to piggyback off of you, bro, how many times have we seen number 2 receivers absolutely torch us? Calvin Ridley torches us every year. You know what I mean? I trust Lattimore to lock down the number 1. That's not a problem. I trust Lattimore. He's going into his 4th season. I trust him. He's pretty much played every number 1 receiver in the league at this point. Obviously, there's going to be a couple adjustments with certain roster, whatever. There's obviously going to be adjustments, but I trust Lattimore to lock down the number 1. 99% of the time. The thing about it is, man, is we have to lock down Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, look at their roster. They got Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. We got to lock down those dudes. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has proven he can step up and lock down, the slot guy, which is usually Antonio Brown. He hasn't had much success against us, but we know we needed that number 2 that could really lock guys down. Janoris Jenkins did a good job. But I think Paulson Adebo is going to be a guy who doesn't just do a good job. I think he's going to be a guy that literally, I think if Lattimore's, off the field issue he had this year ends up carrying over into something serious and they can't get a long-term deal worked out, I could see Adebo being our number 1 corner. It's just, he seems to just fit the mold perfectly for a Saints corner. He's exactly what the Saints need. He's literally an answered prayer. I don't know how he fell to the 3rd round. I really don't. For some reason, the NFL GMs just don't like corners that took a year off. I don't get it. I think if any position should take a year off, it's the corner position, because you have more time to really focus and analyze, just kind of practicing moving your hips and, have more mobility and just kind of gearing up to a pro transitions a little bit more difficult than other positions. So I don't know why all the corners who took a year off were falling so much, but I think that's probably the main reason why Adebo was falling. I am so mesmerized by the fact that he's a converted receiver, and that he made that conversion at the NCAA level and at a very high level too, and was playing at a high level. There was seemingly no transition. It was a flawless transition. We all know with the Joker as our head coach, you never know, man. If we're slim at receiver, we could just have my boy hop on over. I mean, there's endless possibilities with guys like this, and it's the kind of guy that Sean Payton, would draft. He wants guys who are versatile, who can play multiple positions, can kind of just be a plug and play guy. Paulson Adebo is that.
Man, look, it's been a good night. I mean, at least for me and you. I don't know about the rest of Who Dat Nation. Some may still feel like we missed out on some players throughout the course of the first 3 rounds of the draft. But I'm very excited, man. I feel relieved. I'm excited to see what these players do. And I feel like all of them, Peyton Turner, Pete Werner, and Paulson Adebo, all have the ability to create immediate impact for the team. And that's what we need as we're trying to get past the divisional, the NFC championship. We're trying to get to a Super Bowl, Jameis Winston possibly. So I'm excited to see what the Saints do. Me and Mike are going to continue to cover the draft. And before I go, I always got to leave you guys with some encouragement, some life tip to help us get through life. And in today's episode, I kind of want to give a call to action for myself, as well as you guys listening, to Mike, to everyone. As we watch the draft, we see players around their family. We see their loved ones. We see, people, being happy for each other, sharing love, sharing wisdom. And it's a good sight to see. That's pretty much everybody's favorite thing to watch on a draft, to see the player's reaction and the family's reaction when the player's name is called. And it just shows the importance of family, friendship, and those bonds, and why it's important as we go through life. So my call to action for everyone, including myself, is to reach out to those that you love. Text them, even if it's a text, it's an email. If you haven't talked to them in a long time, you have some differences, feel free, to reach out to them, man. You never know when that moment will be your last moment, man. And you just want to take advantage of all the time that you have with people, because everyone is important. Everyone is someone that you can learn from, man. And your family and friends are your most important tribe to help you be successful in life. So remember that, to just reach out, man. If call to action next week, let's reach out every day. Reach out to someone new that you haven't talked to in a long time, in a relationship that you think can help you advance in life, and you can help that person as well. Because it is a give and take. So I definitely, just embrace love, share that love with everyone that you come into contact with. And that's kind of the Merv Speak point of the day, just to, take time to celebrate those, even when you're not getting drafted to an NFL team. Take time to show that love to each and every one. You never know what someone's going through, and you never know what your text or what your hug could do for a person as they go through life. So remember that. But we'll be back to cover the rest of the draft, to cover the rest of Saints news. I appreciate my boy Mike for coming on another late night with me, man. I appreciate that, bro. I appreciate that, dog. And we're going to keep giving y'all Saints coverage. But that's it for today's episode, man. I hope you guys feel a lot less stressed, because I sure do. But that's it for today's episode. We'll be back to cover the rest of the draft and the rest of Saints news. Peace.